Hi, my name is Raul Angulo. I'm a retired captain from the Seattle Fire Department with 38 years of service on the line. I'm Captain Emeritus of Ladder Company 6, and I've been assigned to engine companies, ladder companies. My career has involved tours at the Fire Alarm Center and the Training Academy. I've been part of the hazmat team, the USAR Urban Search and Rescue team, the wildland team. So I have a wide variety of experience to draw from. I am a national author. I've written for Fire Engineering magazine. I write for Fire Apparatus magazine. I've written for the International Firefighter, and I'm a regular instructor at FDIC International. I'm the author of the recent textbook, Engine Company Fireground Operations, the 4th edition. This is published by Jones and Bartlett Learning and in conjunction with NFPA. And this is the newest engine company textbook, specifically designed for company officers that's on the market today. And I'm also almost done with the ladder company book, so I'm working on ladder company fireground operations. Anyway, what I'm here to talk about today is defining rescue. We think we know what it is, but we haven't really defined it. Now, everything in the fire department is driven by risk management, even search and rescue. When there's going to be a line of duty death in the fire department, rest assured, like it or not, there's going to be a lawsuit brought against the fire department and the municipality. And the attorneys are going to be checking to see if the fire department and the city, the policy and procedures, were in compliance with NFPA 1500, which is the safety standard for firefighters, and NFPA 1700, which is the structural guide for firefighting. If we're not in compliance with 1500, that leaves the fire department open to liability. Even the wording of mission statements is governed by risk management. For example, if you look at some of these examples, the wording to protect lives and property through fire suppression. The other one says to provide professional and compassionate protection, education, and service to our community. Note that saving lives isn't even in those mission statements. And why do they take that out? Well, because protecting lives is a broader, more achievable term than actually saving lives. Saving lives is real specific. You can protect lives by extinguishing the fire. That protects lives. But actually making a save, that's pretty specific. And so even mission statements now are moving away from that wording to save lives. Risk management decision making on the fireground always starts with size up. There's the initial size up for the incident, but there's also a rescue size up that's conducted by the ladder officer, the truck officer, or the officer assigned to search and rescue. There's ongoing size up, and the subject of survivability profile and survivable spaces has to be considered in the rescue size up. But firefighter safety comes first. If you look at these case studies here, these are fires that happened where you had a tremendous amount of firefighter life, and not to take away from their sacrifice, because anytime the subject is brought up, it invokes a very visceral, emotional response. But we have to get past that to seriously discuss some of the issues that we're facing. And in these particular case studies, these firefighters died, and not one of them was in the act of actually saving a life. In fact, in many of these fires, there was no life hazard at all in the structure except for the firefighters themselves. A real serious case study is the Baltimore fire back in January of 2022, where you had 3 firefighters die in a vacant building. Now, let's go back a little bit. In 2015, 3 firefighters were injured in this exact same building that was vacant at the time. And now in 2022, 3 firefighters were killed. So 3 injuries, 3 firefighters in a building that is unoccupied and there's no life hazard in the building. How do we address that? How do we get past that? What are we going to learn from that? And part of it comes to trying to define really what search and rescue is. If you look at this chart here, this has the survivability profile in the line of duty deaths going from 2009 to 2021. In 2021, there was 141 line of duty deaths. And in those same incidents, only 3 civilians were killed. You can see there's a disproportionate balance between firefighters getting killed in buildings and civilians that are actually being rescued in these same incidents. So let's try and define what a rescue is. What's the difference between a save and an assist? Well, a save is usually just, or let me stand back, let me go back a little bit. When we talk about search and rescue, we just usually define it by the assignment. For example, ladder 6, search and rescue. And so that's the assignment. We know what that means, right? And we combine search and rescue, or SAR as it's sometimes called, as one assignment. In reality, there's 2 separate assignments. Some instructors and some incident commanders don't like to pair those 2 terms together, search and rescue. There's search and there's rescue. And there's a lot of validity to that point. For example, when you're doing a primary search, let's say you have a team of 2 firefighters doing a primary search. They're going through a building systematically, maybe they're doing a right-hand wall search, and they come across a victim. So they have 2 choices. They're either going to switch to rescue mode and take that person out, or they're going to call for help and say, hey, we have a down civilian 2 doors in from the door. Come and rescue them. More than likely, those 2 firefighters are going to switch into rescue mode and take that person out. It's the natural thing to do. The problem is that the primary search gets interrupted. So now that crew either has to come back in and pick up where they left off, or they have to relay that information onto a new crew and say, you know, we got 3 doors down the hallway, that's as far as we got. And the new crew has to take over from there and continue the primary search. So sometimes it's better to have a crew of 4 minimum, so that you have 2 designated for search, even though all 4 are searching. But if a victim is found, then the other 2 will transition into rescue mode and carry that person out to safety while the first 2 continue on the primary search. There may be a victim just in the next room, and so that's probably the more efficient way to go. So search and rescue are definitely 2 separate activities, but we tend to group them together because it's assumed if we're going to search, we're going to rescue somebody. But let's talk about the difference between protecting lives and saving lives in a fire. So obviously we have a traditional search and we have traditional rescues. If you show up at a fire and there's somebody at a window and there's fire coming out the top of the window with smoke, we put up a ladder and we rescue them. That's a rescue in the purest sense. But if we're in a multi-story building, 5-6-story building, and we move, say the fire's on 6, and we move everybody down to floor 3 or floor 2, and we move 20 people down to the hallway or a lobby, or did we save 20 people? No, we moved them. They're called rescue assist. We evacuated them, we relocated them, we directed them. If you're in a hallway and there's a group of people there and we say, hey, the exit's over here to the right, come this way. Is that a rescue or is that an assist? Those are assists. You're not going to get a medal for directing 120 people from a high-rise building. They're not going to give you 120 medals. So those are called rescue assists. We have shelter in place and defend in place. Those terms are used especially in high-rise firefighting when we don't want to dump the entire building. We want to move these people down maybe 5, 10 floors below the activity, or they're going to be safe just staying in their room. Maybe it's just a small fire, and it's best rather to have civilians walking around the hallways and the stairwells for them to remain in their room. Well, those are protecting lives, but those aren't rescues. So for a rescue to be a rescue, let's look at the definition of rescue. An actual rescue is the art of saving or being saved from danger. Building and life safety code language also includes searching for and removing victims from potential harm, from the danger, people that are incapable of self-preservation. It's also reviving them from the results of the exposed danger. A true rescue is saving an unconscious person or a conscious person who is unable to extricate themselves from the fire and products of combustion without the assistance of a firefighter, either down a ladder or out an egress. So for us, an actual rescue is dependent upon the intervention of a firefighter. That's really a rescue. A rescue is always saving a life. They have to survive the event. Let's take, for example, a CPR case, which all of us have been on. We've probably been on more CPR cases than we have actual fire rescues. If we have a resuscitation that lasted for 90 minutes and the patient ended up dying, do we say we saved them? No, we say we lost them, they died. If we have a drowning victim and we do a water rescue and they survive the event, then we rescued them. If they drowned, did we rescue them or did we recover the body? Well, we recovered the body. We didn't rescue them. So it's based on their survivability. So I would ask you, well, what's the difference in survivability between 6 minutes and 6 hours? If somebody dies within 6 minutes, then they're dead. And if we found them in the 7th minute, it would technically be a recovery. If we found someone 6 hours after the fire was out, would we call that a rescue? No, we would call it a recovery. So really, it's dependent on the survivability of the patient. It doesn't sound nice, but if we really dissect it, that's what we're saying. There's different types of rescues. There's immediate rescues. These are the rescues where people are hanging from the windows, they're ready to jump, they're on balconies, and we put ladders up and we rescue them immediately. They're in a position where they need the assistance of the fire department. Or we scan the hallway and they're right inside the door, or they're on the perimeter in some danger. Those are immediate rescues, and we go for those right away. There's also self-extrication and self-rescue. A lot of victims, if they're able, if the fire alarm goes off, they're going to get out of the building. If somebody yells fire in a theater or a public assembly, a lot of people are going to leave the danger. So they self-extricate or self-evacuate. And then we have our own rapid intervention rescues. We got confined space rescue. We got high angle rescue, water rescues. There's different types of rescues. But they're always dependent on the survivability of who's in trouble. We have to work and create environments where we can survive the search and rescue. We can't be in environments that go beyond the rating of our structural PPE. And what is that rating? A lot of people don't know. We estimate, but it's approximately 500 degrees for 15 to 17 seconds. And that's per the NFPA code on the protective clothing. What does that mean? That means that we can endure longer, but as we're exposed to fire, our gear is absorbing heat. And once it reaches the absorption capacity where it can't absorb any more heat, at that point we're going to start feeling the heat and we're going to burn. but we don't wear proximity gear. It's structural firefighting gear, and it's rated for temperatures for up to 500 degrees. Well, when you also look at the survivability thresholds for unprotected humans, their flesh, their skin, the airway, all those temperatures, and there's a whole list of them for first, second, and third degree burns, but they're all below 212 degrees, which is the boiling point of water. After that, they're sustaining thermal burns to the airway, and there's a good chance they may not survive anyway. So we have to take those survivability profiles and conditions in our risk-based decision making, right? Have you ever barbecued in your backyard? Put the lid up and put your head in there? Try and take a breath of that. That's 500 degrees, 300 to 500 degrees. You can't talk, you can't even keep your face in there. And yet somehow we're thinking, as we're searching in high heat temperatures, that there's people here, we have to keep going. Maybe perhaps not. We have to lower those interior temperatures within the rating of our gear. That's good for us and good for the patient. Not to mention the toxicity of the smoke. You got carbon monoxide, you got cyanide, and a whole list of other products of combustion and smoke. You can't breathe smoke. These are all factors that we need to consider. Take a look at this photograph here of this firefighter's face piece. This is courtesy of NIST, and they did a series of tests, I think on 8 different face pieces, and so they started showing degradation at 572 degrees. Those temperatures are well below flashover, and those are temperatures that we frequently encounter in structure firefighting. Just because we have a fire that is beyond the rating of our gear, or it's flashed in many rooms, there's still survivable spaces that we have to search. But in those areas that have gone beyond the threshold of human survival, and we have a lot of tests now done by UL and NIST to give us the scientific evidence so that we know what those parameters are, we have to do defensive searches. What's a defensive search? Well, a defensive search is a way of searching for people that isn't putting you in danger. For example, simply going to stairwells and doorways and yelling in there, is anybody in there? Fire department. Certainly if there's someone there, we're going to make the rescue if somebody answers. We're going to go get them. But we can yell, we can use megaphones, we can scan using the thermal imager from the doorway, or we could put ladders up to the windowsill and we can scan the room using the thermal, or looking in there, or calling from there, or calling from the aerial. But we're calling out from the safety and the perimeter of the fire building that has now been deemed unsafe. We have to remember there's a large group that are going to take issue with what I'm going to say. They say that saving lives is the reason we exist. The fire department our job is to save lives. It's in our mission statements. It's in some, but I'm telling you, I did a lot of research. There's a lot of mission statements that don't say that, and they're changing them because of the liability factor. And you have firefighters who get upset somehow that we're putting search and rescue on a lower tier below extinguishing the fire. And they talk about tradition and our history. Well, let's look at our history. We have to remember that most fire departments started because of some great fire in a city. The Great Seattle Fire, the Great Fire of Boston, the Great Fire of Manhattan, all these great fires, the Great Fire in Chicago. You had volunteer fire departments, or you had fire brigades. This big fire happens and devastates or decimates a large portion of the city. And from that, the fire department was born. If you look at our history again, the fire department started in Benjamin Franklin's day with insuring property. They were the insurance companies that were behind a lot of the inception of the fire service, protecting property from being burned and the salvage of property. Saving lives was implied, and they're closely intertwined, but really It's not part of our history per se. It was fighting fires. That's the reason firefighter and fire departments exist, is to save lives. There's lots of organizations that save lives. The U.S. Coast Guard has the same mission. They save lives. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, EMTs, they save lives. Police officers save lives. The military saves lives. But only the fire department is charged and has the responsibility to extinguish fires. Yes, our mission statement has evolved to include saving lives, but we have to remember that firefighter lives come first. The cities are going to put in place policies and procedures that protect the city from liability. And we can't pick and choose which policies we're going to obey, especially when they involve safety. If we're joining a city fire department, we're obligated to carry out the policies that the fire department puts in place. And a lot of those are going to be based on looking at what's best for the interest of the city. And those are financial priorities, not heroics. The city isn't interested in heroics. They're interested in protecting their financial liability. Some people might say, well, we have to search because we're not in the business of deciding who lives and who dies. Well, we are. We do that all the time, actually. We determine who lives and who dies. We also determine who we treat and who we're not going to treat. If you look at an MCI, what are we taught? We're taught to triage. We do this all the time. There's 4 parts of triage, right? We have the green, which are the walking wounded or uninjured people, and they're fine. There's the yellow. These are people that are injured, but they can have delayed treatment. They're going to be okay. They can wait a little while. Then we have the red. They're still savable, but they need immediate intervention. And then there's the black. These are people that are obviously dead, or no matter what actions we take, they're not going to survive, and so we don't treat them. So we triage and make that life and death decision all the time at the fire department. But yet when it comes to firefighting, we don't want to triage, or we don't want to make those decisions. And we justify it by saying, well, that's our job, and then we're sending firefighters into buildings where there may or may not be anybody in there. And we just can't say, well, there might be somebody in there, so we have to go in. I get it. Trust me, I've been there, but that's not how the administration or the cities are going to see that. It's a tough topic, but I just want to end with this. You know, responsible firefighters, and look at this quote. Responsible firefighters will take increased risks after performing a thorough size up and a risk-benefit analysis to identify viable survivability profiles and survivable spaces, and not to surrender our greatest tools, education, judgment, and experience, to heroics. I also say, and I truly believe, that when the right, confirmed situation presents itself to heroically save a life, our firefighters, we will risk everything, including our own survivability, and aggressively do the right thing and make that rescue. But firefighter lives have to come first. It's just the way it is now. I'm not saying you're going to agree with me. I'm not saying my position is right. I'm just saying that we need to have this discussion. And I hope I've given you some things to consider and talk with your peers. Everybody wants to go home to their families. We say that all the time. But if we truly mean it, to be safe, we have to be smart. And that means taking in all the information that's available now and applying it to our size up and risk benefit analysis the next time we go to a structure fire. Anyway, I'd love to hear your comments. I'm sure I angered some. Some people will agree, but that's what the fire service is all about. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to check this video out. Defining rescue.